Is the Speedefy AX1800 Wi-Fi 6 router, model KX450, any good? Well, I like it. The router solved a lot of problems that I was having with my home network. However, it did something else. It had me questioning my knowledge of networking, specifically about internet security. But before we get to that, here's a little history. I'm really disappointed that Apple decided to discontinue their Airport Extreme. I was really close to getting one, but I didn't want the previous year's model. But unfortunately, the 6th generation, launched back in 2013, was the last one they would ever make. So, for many years, I was chugging along with a Belkin router. It did the job, for a while. But last summer, the performance really started to suffer. I'm not quite sure why, but I suspected that it had something to do with a noisy neighborhood. While you can't hear it, or see it, there are dozens of routers screaming into the air around my house. That's not even counting the hundreds of Wi-Fi devices within a 2-block radius. Using a copy of the macOS WiFi Explorer app, I could see that there was a lot of activity on channel 6, the same channel that my router was using. The app rated the signal quality as extremely poor. I wasn't entirely sure that interference was the cause of the problem, but I also didn't like the idea of using such an old router. So I started hunting for a replacement. There was a set of requirements. It should be under $100, it should have Wi-Fi 6, WPA3 encryption, and it shouldn't require an app to set up the router. The Speedefy AX1800 Wi-Fi 6 router, model KX450, checked all the boxes. I wasn't familiar with the company though, so I was hesitant. But looking at how Speedefy was responding to the customer questions on Amazon, and after checking out their website, I decided to give them a chance. I'm glad that I did. When the router arrived, it was packaged as expected, very purpose-built. There was nothing fancy, only what was needed to make the router work. The contents included the router, a power adapter, an Ethernet cable, a very brief quick start guide, and a small register card. Now, while I appreciate creative package design, such as with the Pocket Tripod Pro, I was pleased to see this simple setup. I didn't even have to attach the antennas. There was one minor disappointment with the hardware though. There's no USB port. For this to be a true alternative to Apple's Airport Extreme, it needed to support Time Machine. As this channel grows, I'll need a better way to store all of these videos. Many of them are 4K. Sadly, the Speedefy KX450 is not a solution to this problem. That's okay though, as there are other solutions, and I knew that there wasn't a USB port before buying this router. That's an important first step in buying a router. Check the back. How many ports does it have? The Speedefy AX1800 Wi-Fi 6 router has a fairly standard array of ports. There is one wide area network port, which connects to a modem, and there are 4 local area network ports. It was very easy for me to set up this router, as I could just unplug the cables attached to the previous router, and then connect them to the new router. There's a WPS button too, which stands for Wi-Fi Protected Setup. I didn't use it. Actually, I turned off that feature. You can change settings like that one by accessing the website for the router. The address to access the site is 192.168.3.1. Nice and simple. However, using HTTPS did not work for me, which I found a bit concerning. Using Brave, a Chromium-based browser, there was a not secure warning in the address bar. I've seen debate online about this issue. It's not clear to me if this is actually a problem. Still, I'd feel better if the connection used was HTTPS. Unfortunately, I didn't see a way to do that. That's when I started wondering about my previous router. I checked the bookmark for the Belkin. I wasn't using HTTPS before. Interesting. But overall, I like the router's website administration. There's a lot that can be done here, and yet it's not cluttered. The interface is clean, yet powerful. The Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol (DHCP) reservation was an especially useful feature. With a KX450, I could easily assign a dynamic IP address to specific devices. This is perfect for security cameras. Previously, with every blackout, even if just for a few seconds, the IP address for my security camera could change. Now, it's always the same. There's no guessing of that last digit or having to log into the router to find it. Very nice. I also like the additional settings such as parental controls or simply setting a timer. If you're always asleep at certain hours of the day or away on certain days of the week, you can set a Wi-Fi schedule. Even better, you can turn the LED light off at certain times of the day. This is such a great feature for people that can't sleep in a room with a glowing light. Just about everything was the same or better than my previous router, except with one thing: MAC addresses. If you don't know what's a Media Access Control address, it's a unique identifier for a network interface controller. Ethernet, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, there's usually a little code assigned to it. When setting up the router, I manually entered in the MAC addresses for the devices on my network. I was setting up a whitelist. That way, only those devices are permitted to be on the network. But a quick Google search shows that I might have been wasting my time, as a hacker could easily spoof a MAC address. I sort of figured that was the case, but even if it's a tiny defense, it's still something of a defense. So I went through the trouble of setting it up. However, this wasn't working with the KX450. Whenever the router restarted, which was set to occur daily, not all of the devices would make it back online. It was creating a frustrating experience. That's when I gave up on MAC address filtering. Eliminating frustration was the main reason for purchasing the Speedefy router. Would it solve the problem of poor connectivity? It did. From the same computer, the signal strength jumped from around 74% to around 84%. That's 10 points. Now the Wi-Fi Explorer app says that the signal strength is only poor instead of extremely poor. So here's the good and not so good about the Speedefy AX1800 Wi-Fi 6 router. It's under $100. Actually, it's around $80. That's nice. Alternatives can easily be double the price. It's easy to set up. I was back online quick. I was expecting this to be more trouble, but it wasn't. It's simple to use. It doesn't have frivolous features that I don't need. It has a nice web-based interface, which is good because I don't want to use an app. There's even a setting to disable the app from remotely administrating the router. Most importantly, it solved the connectivity issue. My home now has proper Wi-Fi coverage. It works, and it works well. The router isn't even properly positioned in my house, but it still covers the whole area. I also have a lot of devices connected. The website says that up to 40 devices can be connected. While I don't have that many, it's nice to see that kind of potential. Now, here's the not so good. There's no USB port. That's disappointing, as I would have liked an easy way to set up home-based file storage. It's not glamorous. If you need a fancy router in order to brag to your friends, this isn't it. It's a utilitarian device. You connect to the internet with it. That's all. I wanted to use HTTPS to administer the router. Also, I wanted to use MAC address filtering. I'm not happy that I couldn't get it to work right. Overall, though, I like the router. I could have returned it, but I didn't. That's because I think that the disadvantages don't outweigh the advantages.